Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the VOC Online Matric Revision session conducted in collaboration with Futures Academy Essays Online High School. And I'm welcoming all our grade 12 learners who are preparing for the mathematics literacy papers in the final examination, inshallah. Do like and share these videos. It is live now on Facebook as well as Voice of the Cape YouTube platforms. Our guest facilitator for this morning is Raihaanah Johnson, and she is a facilitator also at the Futures Academy Essays Online High School today to share insight to assist you ahead in terms of your examinations and preparation. Assalamu alaikum, Raihaanah. Welcome.
Walaikum salam, Konita. Shukran for welcoming me today.
Alhamdulillah, it's an absolute pleasure having you with us. And I think for those grade 12 learners who are preparing, I think this is a very wonderful opportunity for them to now follow through on the lesson and just reminding them that this session is recorded so they can always go back to the lesson, once it's completed, etc. And we also encourage them to engage us on our Facebook platforms. I know here and there we do get comments, but to also share this, inshallah. So, Raihaanah, what can we expect in today's session?
Okay, so for today's session, obviously we're focusing on maths literacy. And today I'm just going to chat through the paper one weighting of the sections, the specific sections in the final exam paper. And I'll be taking it from the exam guidelines from the government. So we'll be working through those just to see so they know more or less what weighs more, what weighs less. And then once we've gone through that, I'll be going into taxation because I do find that our learners they struggle a bit with understanding the concept of taxation and putting into play the steps of calculating income tax, that sort of thing. So that's what we'll be covering today, inshallah.
Wonderful. I will not delay it any further. I see that we already have some people who have joined us viewing the session. So I hand over to you to proceed. Bismillah.
Okay. Shukran, Konita. Okay, so welcome guys to our maths literacy session today. And so I'd like to give learners a understanding of what they're getting themselves into, right? So I think a lot of us we go through school and stuff sort of understanding what our final exam is about, and I do think that that's already like half of your preparation is knowing exactly what is in your exam. Okay, so if you look at the screen, you can see that this is from the exam guidelines that you'll find on the government website. And so we're not going to look, so ignore this side. This does get a bit confusing, but we're actually going to ignore that side for now. We're looking at this side, okay? So this tells us exactly what your final paper at the end of the year. So I think you guys are writing October, November. What it is made up of. Okay, and today we'll just focus on paper one. So let me just outline that, and we're just looking at this over here. So by now you should have already written your prelim exam, which would have been out of 150 marks, and it should have had more or less the same layout as this. Okay, the questions might have been a bit different, but the layout should have been the same. And so I know I scratched this out, but just maybe let's just take that away. So if we look at it over here, our finance is 60% of your paper, which accounts for about 90 marks. That's quite a lot of marks in your paper. So finance is quite a big section, and finance encompasses your interest calculations, your income and expenditure, cost calculations, profit, loss, taxation. So it's a lot of content to be covered in one section. You also get your break-even analysis. All of that is covered under finance. Okay, so it's a lot of content, and that's why it is such a big percentage of the paper. So I know 60% for those of you who struggle with the finance, it's a daunting number, but actually it makes sense because a whole chunk of our year was just learning finance. Okay. And then the second section is your data handling. So this is 35% of your paper, which accounts for about 53 marks in the paper. Okay. And that's your bar graphs, histograms, pie charts, analyzing data, mean, mode, median, all those sorts of things. Okay. That's our data handling. And then our last part of our paper one is our probability. Okay. And probability is actually usually, it's not usually a section on its own. It's actually more of a add on to questions. So you'll see, I'll show you when we go through taxation questions what I'm talking about. But it's usually like at the end of a question, they'll say, calculate the probability that, I don't know, calculate the probability that everyone went to school on that day. So it's usually just a few marks at the end of a finance question or the end of a data handling question. Okay. So what I find that a lot of learners forget is that, yes, okay, these are the specific sections, but remember that in Math Lit, a lot of it is also prior knowledge. Okay, so it's working with rate, ratio, and I'm actually just going to name those topics for you. So these are actually called our basic skills. Okay, and basic skills would be, I'll write them down just so that it is easier to see. Basic skills would be examined in both your paper one and paper two. Okay, and this is what it actually is. So these are skills you've picked up from basically from like grade 6 up, working with percentages, fractions, that sort of thing. Okay, so we've got your number formats, which are, so number formats would be rewriting a number in words or rewriting a given word in numbers. Okay, so that sort of thing would be number format. You've got your operations, so adding, subtracting, dividing, multiplying, those sorts of things also falls under basic skills. Okay, and you need to remember things like bod mass and that sort of thing. Okay, so obviously you are allowed to use your calculator, but sometimes there'll be other questions about operations that might not, like the calculator won't necessarily help you. Okay. Um, so operations, the next thing is rounding off. So rounding off isn't really asked as a separate question, but we know that each paper, when you get your paper at the beginning of your exam, the beginning, your guidelines in the front, your instructions will tell you you need to round off to the nearest whatever or within context. And I find a lot of learners struggle with that. Um, and so when they say you need to round off within context, it means, so in finance, you always round off to two decimal places. That's always, finance is always to two decimal places. In So if we're talking about, say we're doing a data handling question and we do an example where they're people and your answer you get is 5 comma 4 people. So realistically, you can't get zero point 0.4 of a person, right? So then you need to round it off within the context. So either you'll say, okay, I can only have 5 people, or it needs to be 6 people, but you would have to read it according to the question. But what you need to remember is that you can't get zero point 0.4 of a person. One thing that comes up often in your paper too is you would do a measurement question and you would have, let's say, that you calculate the volume that needs to be painted in a room, and then they ask you how many tins of paint you need. And so then you would do your calculations and you'd get 32.4 or 32.5 tins of paint. So, in that, if you think about it within context, 32.5, you can't go to a shop and ask them for zero point 0.5 of a paint tin, right? So, you would have to actually get 33 tins of paint. Because if you get 32, it won't be enough to cover the entire volume, but 33 will be more than enough. Okay, so that's what that means within context. So the next thing is you're working with ratios, and I think no, okay, I don't think in these examples today. But ratios are just they'll say like Johnny gets 4 sweets. So let's just do this example. So Johnny gets 4 sweets and Kathy gets 12. And they'll ask you to simplify this ratio. So remember, when we're simplifying ratios, we are taking the smallest number and dividing both sides by it. Okay, so for this, we would divide this by 4, divide this by 4, and our simplified ratio would be 1 is to 3. Okay, so those are ratios, just in case you needed an example. The next thing is proportion, and we use proportion in a lot of different aspects in Maths Lit. You use it when you're doing speed, distance, and time calculations, sometimes with finance calculations. And this is basically just saying if this person gets um, so let's use speed, distance, and time, okay? So it's basically saying that speed is equal to distance over time, and if your time changes, your distance has to change in order for your speed to change. Okay, so it's that sort of thing. Or they would say that the sides of a wall scale's a good one to use. Okay, so we know. Let me just. I know I'm moving around a lot, but I want to give you examples of it. So if we talk about scale in a, so let's say this is a bedroom. They tell us this is a bedroom, and they say, okay, the scale is 1 is to 100. Okay, so this means 1 unit in real life is equal to 100 units. 1 unit on the map is equal to 100 units in real life. So this is proportion. This is a typical example of proportion. Okay, so that's where proportion comes up in Math Lit. The next thing is rates, and this is also speed, distance, and time. But also they'll ask you about how much water can get pumped out of a pipe if it flows at the rate of, I don't know how water pumps out of a pipe, but let's say 4 liters per every 2 minutes. Okay, so that's rate, where it's comparing two different units. In our example, it was liters per minute. And then lastly, we talk about percentages. So just working with percentages, calculating percentage costs, percentage profit, percentage loss, all of those sorts of things, that's also a big part of MathLit. And specifically, it's a big part of finance. Okay, so these are the basic skills that you need to know for both papers. So I always advise that you go through these basic skills first, okay? And you make sure that you do understand this before delving into your paper 1 and paper 2 stuff, just because once you fix these, the paper 1 and the paper 2 work becomes a lot easier. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our exam guidelines. So I said finance for paper 1, finance is 60%, data handling is 35%, and your probability is 5%. But keeping in mind that those basic skills are embedded within all of these sections. Okay. So another thing that they do in these paper 1s and paper 2s, we'll speak about paper 1 specifically. Sometimes, actually, it's more with paper 2 that they do it, but they'll put finance into paper 2 sometimes. Okay, so just remember that once you finish studying finance for paper 1, it will still be in paper 2. Okay. um yeah, so then the second, I actually have, oh, it is this one. The second thing I just wanted to show you was how the questions are. So this is the weighting of the topics which we just discussed. And over here, they make a note that growth charts, so BMI and growth charts and stuff, is also assessed in paper 1. But I wanted to just show you how the questions are set up. Okay, so with Math Lit, the questions aren't as structured as the paper 1 for pure maths, where like paper 1 will be just on algebra. Here in our paper 1, question 1, It's both finance and data handling, but the lower level ones. Okay, so it'll be easier finance and data handling. Your question two will be just finance, and it will be a more complex finance example. Question three will be a more complex data handling example. And then question four, so the paper could have 4 or 5 questions. So question 4 or 5 will be finance and data handling integrated. Okay, so a finance question with data handling attached to it, or a data handling question with finance attached to it. Um, and then probability will be examined within these questions. Okay, so usually within question two and question three and question four and five. So again, you'll see when we do the taxation questions what I mean by they are examined within those. Okay. Um, yeah, so in terms of exam guidelines, that's pretty much it. What I am going to do now is just go through, now that you have this in your mind, I just want to show you the paper one from 2022, just so that you can see what, like, with what we've just spoken about, you can see it in context. Okay, so our cover page. So just remember to always read this. I know it looks like random information, but it's important to read it, especially for these sorts of things where it says the diagrams are not drawn to scale, indicate units of measurement, and round off all answers appropriately according to the given context. Okay, unless stated otherwise. So those are all things you just need to read so that you have an idea of what you need to do in each section. Okay. So question one we said was level one, finance and data handling. And as you can see here, this is cost calculations. Okay, so that's all. Um, okay, that's all finance. No, no, no. So this is actually data handling. Um, Categorical, numerical. So this is all data handling, but within a finance context. Okay. And then over here, you can see they give you a little bit of probability towards the end of this question. So that's what I mean. Probability won't be on its own, it's examined within the papers. Okay. The next part of paper one is about stock files, and we know that's on finance. Okay. And this is investments, and it's an easier finance question. Then some more data handling. This we've got our bar graphs. Um, And yeah, so we won't go through this today because it's not really what we're covering. But you can see it's bar graphs, but it's also got some finance within it. Okay, so it's a bit of a mixture of everything in one. Okay, then question two is our finance question. And you can see over here, we've got insurance policies, monthly premiums, home loans, that sort of thing. And then we've got some tariffs. I know lots of people don't like tariffs. It's examined in paper one under finance. Okay, so we've got some tariffs. And then question three, we've got again data handling. Data handling. And then our question four is our taxation question. Okay, so some more finance. And then you'll see question four also includes data handling. Okay, so today we are going to go through this question four over here just once we get into the taxation part of the lesson. And then we've got some more data handling, and then some more data handling, and exchange rate. So that falls under finance again. So you can see your paper one is pretty much data handling and finance, but spread out nicely, and the questions are never too tough. Okay, so yeah, I hope that gives you a good idea of what is going on in your paper, and you have more of a idea of what to expect in your end of your paper. Okay. Okay, so today what I want to focus on, now that we've covered the exam guidelines, is taxation. Where are my taxation notes? They're somewhere. Okay, so no, okay, I think I must just write these ones down here. So taxation is it's actually an easy topic, okay, but I do find that it isn't you learners don't tend to gel with it well. You guys get stressed out when you hear the word taxation. And so I want to try to simplify it a bit for you today. Okay. And the way I'm going to do that is just to take from the exam guidelines again. I'm going to tell you what you need to know about taxation in terms of the guidelines. Okay. So, in terms of your guidelines, it's broken up into level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. And so, obviously, as you level up, the questions become more complex. Okay. So, I haven't put it in terms of levels, I've just put it in terms of two different sections. And the first one is that you need to be able to read a pay slip. Okay, and you'll recall that in terms of finance, your documents, your financial documents also falls into your paper one. Okay, so this would fall under that financial document section, but also taxation. So with your payslip, you need to be able to identify the employee's name. I would go as far as saying you need to be able to identify both the employee and the employer. Okay. So I'm going to show you an example of a payslip, and you'll be able. I'll point these out for you. The other thing is you need to be able to identify the month that this payslip was given in. Okay, you need to be able to. Sometimes it's not just a month; it's a period. So you need to be able to identify the period that this payslip falls into. You need to be able to identify the person's monthly. So I say monthly salary. Remember, salary is usually monthly. Okay, so but just monthly salary, not annual. And you'll see why that's important. And then the last and one of the most important things is that you need to be able to identify the person's deductions from their payslip. Okay, so when we're working with payslips, we need to be able to see who is receiving the money, who is paying the money, when is this money being paid, how much money is being paid, and what gets deducted from this person's salary. Those are the things that you need to look out for. So let's go into a payslip and actually have a look at it. So this is just from one of the past papers. So here you can see, I'm sorry, I think I see now this isn't a great copy, but I think you guys should be able to see it. The employee. So, employee is the person being employed by the company. Okay. So, it's Mr. Kivido, and he is being employed by Tusabato Construction Company. So, the employer is the person who would be paying the money into Mr. Kivido's account. Okay. What else are we seeing here? We can actually tell that he's the manager or he's a manager of this construction company. They give you his date of birth. Okay. Here you get the pay date. So this would tell us what the period of the salary is. So this is a July. We can see it's the 7th. So this is a July salary slip. Then they give us the gross salary. Gross salary means what the company pays to him before the deductions. Okay, so before the deductions come off, that's what the salary pays to him. Then they give you the total deductions over here. So if they add all of it together, and they give you net salary, which I haven't given you the value for, but you can go and calculate it. Then at the bottom of the payslip, they give you his earnings and his deductions. Okay, his earnings would be all the different types of incomes that he gets from this company, which for him is his basic salary, and he gets a housing allowance. Some people get a travel allowance. Some people will get, I don't know, like So if you work on commission, you'll get commission. Those are all different types of income that you can get paid, okay? Then in his deductions, he's got his income tax, his pension fund, medical aid. He's got three insurance policies, and he's got his agency. So I'm assuming this is some sort of fee that he has to pay every month. The insurance policies could be car insurance, house insurance, life insurance. So remember, those cover three different types of insurance. It wouldn't just be for one thing, okay? So, just as a matter of interest, we're not going to go very deep into this question, but just as a matter of interest, let's look at how we would calculate this net salary and they name it M. How would we go and actually calculate M? So, M is your net salary, okay? And your net salary would be your gross salary minus your deductions. And so in here, we would just take our gross salary, which is 31,221 Rand and 25 cents, and we would subtract our total deductions, 9362,62. Let's add all our R's. Okay, and then if we just use our calculator, that should give you a net salary of 21,858 Rand and 63 cents. So at the end of the month, that's what he comes away with. Okay, that's his total that he actually gets paid out at the end of the month. The next thing they ask us to calculate is N, which is our medical aid. And so this can get a bit tricky, but we know what the total deductions is. Okay, so if we were to add all of these guys up in this lane over here, in this column, it should equal to 9362,62. Okay. So knowing that, I can see that if I just take this and I subtract all these little bits, it will give me my value of my medical aid. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down here. So we'd have to go 93, so to calculate N, 9362,62 minus 4736,9 minus 2251,59 minus 245,23 minus 192,70 141,95, and the last one is 90,25. So let's see what that gives us. 9362,62. Okay, and so the total there should be 1,704 Rand. And so that's what he pays for his medical aid every month. Okay, 1,704 Rand. And so that's just the type of calculations that you could get when you have a payslip. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to show you an example of a payslip so that you can see it in terms of what we spoke about over here. Okay. So, next one. That was payslips. So the next thing that you need to know in terms of taxation is, let me just move this over this way. You need to be able to define the following. Okay. Oh, my pen went away now. Okay, sorry guys. Just go back in. Okay. So we were here. Okay, so I have to just keep, there we go. So the next thing is we need to, oh, so our definitions that we need to know for taxation. Okay, so these are the ones that are listed on your exam guidelines. You need to know a lot of others in order to do the questions though. Okay, so but as you do questions and as you work through examples, you'll pick up on them. So the first one is your gross, okay, gross pay. So this could be gross salary, gross wages, whatever type of pay they get. Then you've got your deductions. So gross pay, we just said now, was our amount that your company is going to give you without any deductions yet. Okay. Your deductions would be things that get subtracted from your gross pay before it's paid out to the employee. So things like pension, medical aid, if the company is covering that, all those sorts of things. Then you get your net pay. And you guys saw now from the calculation, your net pay is just your gross pay minus your deductions. Okay. And then we've got taxable income, which is your taxable income is the income that you get subtract minus all your deductions. Okay. And we'll go into this a little bit more when we do examples. And then the last thing that you need to know with regards to taxes is working with your tax tables. Okay, so, and I'm going to show you the examples of the latest tax tables, but let's just first talk through what you need to know. So, firstly, you need to be able to read it. Okay, you need to be able to interpret it, obviously. Then from the tax tables, you need to be able to identify which bracket you are working on, working in, and that will be a example specific thing. So if you're working with someone who earns a certain amount of money, you'd have to work in a specific bracket, and you'll see how we do that. And then the last thing you need to do, be able to do, is use the formula. And again, when we do the examples, you'll be able to see. So I just want to show you the tax brackets, the tax table. So this is your tax table, okay? And this gives you your rate of tax. So this is how you calculate tax. So these are your brackets you'd have to choose from. It's usually got numbers on the side here. And you choose according to what the person's annual salary is. Then besides the tax brackets that you have to work with, you also have to be able to identify a person's rebates, okay? And that we'll go into it more when we're doing examples. And another thing is tax threshold. So dependent on your age and how much you earn, you would have to pay a certain amount of tax, okay? So if you are under 65 years old and you make 95,750 Rand within 2024, you have to pay tax. If you are under 65 and you make over 91,250 Rand in the year, then you have to pay taxes, okay? Anyone making less than that, they would not have to pay any taxes. So those are just the three tables that you guys could encounter in your exams. Okay, so I've just made a little bit of a dummy example just to get the gist of what we are doing. Here we go. Okay, let me just put him over here, actually, and then, yeah. Oops. No, that's not gonna work. Let's do this. Okay, so we're just looking at this top part now. Okay, so I just went with the person A, okay, and they are 35 years old. They make 25,000 Rand salary. Their pension is 7.5% of their salary, and they've got themselves and one adult on medical aid. So these are the sorts of things you need to identify in tax questions, okay? Because From there, you'll be able to calculate the annual salary and then go back to your tax tables and see whether this person actually pays taxes or not. But before we actually go into this question, I want to show you the steps for calculating income tax. So, one thing I do want to just note is the difference between income tax and the difference between um, it's a taxable income and annual or monthly. It could be either one. It depends on the question. So annual or monthly income tax. So I find that this is something that you guys mix up a lot. So your taxable income is the income that you make which can is going to be taxed. Okay, so this means that you go and calculate your annual income and you subtract the non-taxable deductions from it, so things like donations and pension and UIF. You subtract that from your taxable income. And then annual or monthly income tax is the amount of money that you are paying into SARS. So that is your actual tax that is calculated using the steps I'm going to show you now. Okay, so just make sure you understand the difference between those, because if they ask you to calculate your taxable income, it would just be your annual income minus your pension, minus your charity, minus your UIF. But if they ask you for your annual or your monthly income tax, we have to use this whole setup that I'm going to show you now. Okay, so let's go. So the steps for calculating income tax, very simple, but just make sure you do understand the steps and you know where everything fits. So the first thing you need to do is calculate the annual income, okay? And remember, annual is your yearly income. And so usually if it's given in a salary, it's a monthly salary and you would have to times by 12. But make sure that you read the question correctly because sometimes it's already in the yearly salary. Okay. Then you need to go and identify your tax deductibles. And often it's just pension and your donations. Okay. So I also mentioned UIF, but that doesn't come up often. Pension and donations. The next step would be to calculate your taxable income, and this would be your annual income minus your tax deductibles, okay? And that would give you your taxable income. Then you need to go and look at this table. So from there, you'll go, okay, that's my taxable income, but now do they actually qualify? Let's have a look at that table. Do they qualify to pay tax? So what's the age? And is it over whatever that year's threshold was? Okay. The next thing is we need to identify our tax bracket. So when we do that example on person A, you'll see it in context more. But you would need to go, you've got the taxable income now, so you'd have to go look over here, see which bracket they fall into, and then identify that formula for that bracket. Okay, so that's our tax bracket. And then once you've got that, you go and substitute into the formula. And I'll show you how to do that as well. The next step is you need to subtract your rebate. So subtract. And it's dependent on the person's age again, but if it's just a person like we're going to do under 35, they would just have this as a tax rebate, okay? Just one. If it's somebody who is 75 and older, you would subtract this, this, and this, okay? If it's someone who's just 65 and older, it would be just this and this. Okay. So that's that one. The next thing is your medical aid tax credit. So I didn't, there's not an example on I didn't find it on the SARS website, but they'll give you the rate and I'll show you an example of that as well. Okay, so the next one you would need to do is calculate your medical aid tax credit and calculate it on an annual basis. So you'd probably have to multiply by 12 And then usually the last step is to get your monthly income tax. So you'll take all of these things that you did and you divide that by 12. Just to note that this medical aid tax credits also get subtracted, okay, just like the rebate. Okay, so let's see those in action now. Let's look at those steps in action. So we've got our person A, and they are 35 years old. And so 35 years old, they make a 25,000 Rand salary. Their pension is 7.5% of their salary. And they have themselves and one adult on medical aid. So I just want to actually go to this paper so that I can see what the medical aid rates are. Is it this one? No, okay, that's 2022. Okay, just give me 1 second, guys. Here we go. Okay, so we're just going to use these same rates. Okay, so it's 310 for the main member and the first dependent, and then 209 for any additional. Okay, so let me write that down. So 310 and 209 for any additional. Okay, so our first step according to our table is to calculate the annual salary. So you're going to go 25,000 and you're going to multiply that by 12. And that should give you 300,000. Okay, that's our first step done and dusted. What's our second step? Our second step was to determine the tax deductibles. So for this person, he actually only has, or he or she only has the salary, the pension. So you're just going to go pension and you're going to calculate that. So the pension will be 25,000 and you're going to times that by 7.5%. 7.5%. Okay, and that gives you 1,875, but that's per a month. We need to have it in yearly terms, so that you're going to multiply by 12. So that, and you multiply by 12. So you're going to get 22,500 Rand, and that's your only tax deductible at the moment. So the next step, if we look at our table, it's to calculate your taxable income. I'm just going to abbreviate taxable income to TI. Okay, and that's going to be our gross salary minus our deductibles, which gives you 1, 2, 3 minus your answer, 277,500. Okay, so this is his taxable income now. So let's look at what our next step is going to be. So our next step is, do they actually qualify for taxable? So we're going to say this was the 2022 year, okay, just to make it simpler. Do they qualify to pay tax? Let's see. Let's go to our tax tables, and our threshold is down here. In 2022, if you were under 65, you had to earn that much or more. So yes, this person, that's for the year, okay? So yes, this person definitely does qualify. So 4 is yes. Number 5, we need to identify his tax bracket. So if we look at, no, not you, if we look at his salary, his taxable salary, it's 277,500, okay? So it's going to fall within the second bracket over here. So we're going to go tax bracket 2, and the formula is 4068 plus 26% of the taxable income over 2260. Okay, so that's the formula. And if I were to rewrite this as a formula without words, it would be this. So you'll take his salary and subtract that. Okay, and so let's see what our answer is there. Okay, so our answer is 54,070 Rand. So that is the rate of tax that this person has to pay in a year. Are we done though? Let's check. Are we finished now? No. Okay, so our next thing we need to do is we need to check the rebate. So if we go back to our tax tables over here and look at the rebates, he is only going to get the primary rebate, okay, because definitely is under 65. And he's going to get the primary tax rebate in 2022. So 15,714. So all we do now is you just take, you're going to take this amount and you're going to subtract, and I've forgotten, 15,714 from that. And that's going to give you this. Okay. The next step is to calculate your medical aid credits. So medical aid credits, we've already said over here, is that it's 310 Rand for the main member and for the first dependent and 209 for anyone after. They've got themselves and one adult on medical aid, so they're just going to have 310 plus 310, which will end up being 620. But this is per a month, so you need to go and times that by 12. So that's going to give you 7,440, and now I can go subtract that from this amount. So I'm going to go my 38,356 minus my 7,440. Okay, so 38356 minus 7440. And that's going to give us 30,916 Rand. Now we're heading to our last step, which is to actually calculate how much income tax this person pays in a month. And that's our easiest step, but it's the most forgotten about one. All you're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to divide it by 12. Okay, to get a monthly amount. So you take that, divide it by 12, and this person is going to pay 2,576 Rand and 33 cents income tax every month. Okay, so that is pretty much, I thought we'd have more time to be honest, but I think we've done quite a bit today. That's pretty much your steps. So these are your steps over here, and that's put into play. We put the steps into play over here, and that should give you a good understanding of how to handle pension, how to handle medical aid, all of those sorts of things. Okay. The questions in your exam paper, it's not straightforward. It's not straightforward. It's not, you won't have to do this whole situation in one go. It's usually broken up, but you need to understand how to do all of this. Okay. Yeah, so guys, I think that's it for today. I hope that you found this informative, and I hope that you have a better understanding of what to expect come your end of year exam, inshallah.
Inshallah, I'm like to add as well for that very informative session today. I certainly learned something. I feel like I can have a better understanding of calculating income tax,
And
most certainly.
so that's the
Thanks
nice thing
again.
about Math Lit. It's a
Yeah.
usable tool. Like they learn a lot of things that they can actually use in their life. It's nice.
Yeah, so that was pretty, informative for me. Do like and share our page to our viewers on Facebook and YouTube. Share it, and inshallah, we'll have you back. Is it next week?
Inshallah. I think
Yeah.
so, yes. It's inshallah.
Okay. So, but we'll keep you updated on that on our social media platforms. And from my staff and my guest, Raihaanah Johnson, we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.